Namaskar and welcome to this very special interview on IIPA. I am Rakhi Bakshi and as you know that we are talking to some of the brightest minds here, trying to understand the insights and perspectives that they present to us. And right now also we have a very special guest right now here in the studio, and I'm delighted to introduce him, a PadmaShri and now the president of INSA, Indian National Science Academy. I'm talking about Professor Ashutosh Sharma here. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here and welcome to this very special interview. My first question would be that how INSA, Indian National Science Academy, is trying to look at its horizon, which is at present there, and also trying to enlarge that landscape, sir.
Thank you, Rakhi, for having me here and asking a very important question. So the academies of sciences around the world, they represent the top in science in every country, whether it is Royal Society in the UK or the Academy of Sciences in the US and all of that. And INSA was set up 90 years ago. Today we are celebrating 90 years of having an Academy of Science in the country, which represents over 1,000 top scientists in every discipline of science, engineering, medicine, and so on. So it's a conglomeration of very bright top minds in every area of not just pure science, but applied sciences, engineering, medicine. And so it represents a very great resource for the country, really a distillate of the top brains in the country. Now, having said that, the academies around the world, they historically they lack connect with society or larger connect with society. So while all the top scientists are indeed members, there ought to be more democratization of that science, in that we are able to reach out to much larger number of stakeholders of science in the country, be able to inspire them, to motivate them, to bring the best of science to their doorsteps. So there are two aspects that we work on in academy, that I've been working on for last 3 years. The first one is diversity, inclusion, and equity. The second one is related to democratization. In other words, a better and a stronger connect with society. The first aspect, which is diversity, let me give you an example. So diversity that we seek is of 3 or 4 different kinds. So one of them, very important one, is gender. INSA has about 7% women scientists as fellows, and this is not something which is very unique to INSA. This would be true of all the top academies of science in the world, across the world. So that needs to be corrected. The second diversity, which often goes missing in academies of science, is that of age. So when we certainly need people with a lot of experience and wisdom, but we also need people with a lot of energy and greater connect with the contemporary world, which means age. So we need younger people certainly to be involved in the activities of academy. The third diversity that we must focus on is the areas which are represented, or the stakeholders of science. Now, historically...
So what do you mean by those stakeholders here?
I'm coming to that. So of course, women are stakeholders equally. The younger people are also stakeholders of science, because they bring in this energy and more intimate connect with what is happening in the world, and the hunger. So those are very important. And the third aspect about the area of science, there are one stakeholders of science who create science, which we call scientists, that we call academic people and so on. They do research, they write papers. So that's one stakeholder base of science. But there are other kind of people who use science, who not create science but consume science in order to create new socio-economic opportunities and impact. So if you were to look at, for example, somebody like Narayan Murthy, so using, let's say, your IT, you created this big industry, which then supports so many jobs and creates new science, if you would, are doing that. So they are equal stakeholders of science. Let's say the top leaders of industry, the top leaders who are running big government missions, for example, let's say quantum mission or AI mission and all this stuff. At the same time, also people who work in NGOs and make impact on the ground using science. Maybe it's in water, maybe it's in energy, what have you. So all of these people also are stakeholders of science.
So you talked
People
about the
here.
quantum mission. Can you
Yes.
elaborate more as to how
Right.
India right now is
So
striving
I would,
towards?
so therefore complete by saying one of our missions in INSA is to see that we involve all of these people, young people, women, and people who not doing research only, but using research to create opportunities. So we have created new categories of fellowship and membership to engage all of these people with the academy and the activities of the academy. So that's happening. At the same time, what is it that academies need to do? Which is a very novel idea, because other academies, in fact, are learning from INSA about how an academy should be. So this is about the stakeholder base of academy. Now, what is it that you do with it? That's very important. So the way I look at it, there are three very important transitions in academic life which need to be managed well. Now, the very first one of them is when one joins for PhD. These are the foot soldiers of science. So if we don't have good quality PhD, if they are prepared, we will never make good science in the country, no matter how much money one pumps into it. So money is one aspect of that equation of doing good research, but we need good PhD students. So we need to prepare them. So INSA has prepared a course, a program for PhD students, that they need to know everything about, hey, what is research about, how do you do good research, how to have mental stability to deal with failure, all sorts of things like that that everybody ought to know. The second transition happens, which makes for a successful research, is when you get your first academic job, independent scientist and assistant professor. So they have to be cultivated for their career. You see, unlike in bureaucracy, unlike in civil services where people do a lot of these courses, a lot of these programs and training, very intensive training, scientists don't get any training of that kind. So this is a very serious weakness. And in INSA, we are addressing having a program for people who, let's say, join, young people who just joined the academia. So they need to actually manage their research. They need to understand what kind of research to follow with direction, with relevance, with quality. Also manage, a whole lot of administrative duties. They need to go to conferences. They need to write papers. They need to manage their research group. They need to raise money. They need to set up their lab. All of this has to be done through a good training. And so that is being done. And the third transition, which is so important, is that when a mid-career scientist becomes an administrator of science or of an academic institution. For example, directors, for example, vice chancellors and so on, deans even, or heads, they are not prepared. Okay, it's just that some good scientist is there and he's made one of these positions, but the person may have not the slightest idea about how to manage, how to administer
Sir,
good science.
let me come in here. You're talking about the science administrators, actually.
Yes.
Do tell us more about it. I think that is
I'm
a
telling
great thing.
because we are sitting here in
Yeah.
right kind of place to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about it. And so I've had, this I shared with Honorable Minister Dr. Jiten Singh Ji, and so he realized right away that this is such a great weakness in the country, because there are hundreds of universities, there are hundreds of institutions, labs, and so on. All of them have to be administered, they have to be managed well. So, but there is no training. So INSA has started a specialized training for mid-career scientists who have the potential to become tomorrow's vice chancellors, directors, deans, heads, what have you. So basically, all the way from cradle to grave of academia, we must prepare people. And so this is one of the very major functions of academy that we have started. And finally, academy has to play a very important role in having policy research related to science, technology, innovation, and so on. If you think about it, we need a think tank. Of course, there are some think tanks, NGOs and stuff, but nobody in the country has the kind of brain power behind it. Over 1,000 top scientists of the country in every possible area. So no consultancy company, nobody has that kind of resources at their command. So we must leverage these resources for our policy research related to science, technology, innovation, and then advise the government, different ministries wherever they need advice related to this. So this is all about academy. Okay.
I think that's
Now,
a great deal that you've told us, sir.
Oh, there are more, but okay, we'll run out of time.
So talking about right now the theme of Viksit Bharat, and how do we take science in this whole framework of Viksit Bharat, the journey towards that?
Correct. So Viksit Bharat, okay, first of all, let me point out, no country has ever developed without hugely respecting science, technology and innovation. There is no other path. So one, let us be very clear and very convinced that we want Viksit Bharat, then we want our science and technology to be strong, point number one. Point number two, that we want to have Atmanirbharta in our science, technology and innovation, because not everything can be imported, not everything critical could be imported even if you wanted to, and furthermore, that important things don't really understand India, necessarily Bharat. So we need to understand what our problems and needs are, and therefore find science and technology solutions to those needs. So Viksit Bharat has to build upon these pillars of science technology which is relevant and which has direction, which respects our needs. To give you an example, because I don't want to talk only abstract, to give you an example, artificial intelligence, we know everywhere has risen so fast. In fact, when I was secretary in Department of Science and Technology for about 7 years, and I've already retired from there 4 years ago. So about 8 years ago, I had started thinking about AI and impact it's going to make. So we started a mission called Cyber Physical Systems, worth about 4,000 crores. We set up 25 hubs of cyber physical systems across the country. And so what was the idea? Look, the whole world is being driven by AI today and for all foreseeable future. But if you look at things like Industry 4.0, IoT, look at AI, think about intelligent machines. All the countries who are forerunners of this, they are doing it because they don't have young people. They don't have people. So the only way the economy can grow is by putting in machines there that substitute for people who are not there. Our problem is opposite. So it's not blindly copying some technology. Is we have demographic dividend. The average age, the median age of the country is close to 28 years, and so we have all these people, energetic people, educated people, thinking people, hungry people.
So my question here would be how to harness that energy right now that we're talking about Swadeshi.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So I'm saying, so while we have to use the same technology, AI for example, right? You cannot stop the march of technology, never happen. So you have to understand what our problems are and how to you harness AI for our problems, not to substitute people. We have people. So therefore, what we have to do is, we are doing it, is to understand what are the problems that you cannot solve without AI, how to reach people who are unreachable with traditional technologies. So just to give you an idea about, let's say you look at medical diagnostics. Now we don't have as many radiologists as would be needed in the country. So it's not a question of substituting a radiologist. It's a question of enlarging your pie. You are able to reach larger number of people with this new technology, whether it is judiciary, whether it is administration, whether it is disaster management, whether it is fisheries, whether it's agriculture, whether it is mapping, surveying, or health or transport. All of these sectors, we can enlarge their scope and impact if we were to use these new technologies. But for that, we have to understand who we are and what our needs and our problems are. And so this is exactly what is being done with the new technologies in the country. And so we are looking at this Viksit Bharat. So Viksit Bharat, of course, also has this Atmanirbharta built into it. I would like to a little bit conclude by saying that while we are saying all the time about, hey, we need great science and technology, of course we do. But how we are going to do it? It's not merely a matter of just putting in more money, and of course that's being done. I'll come to that in a moment. But by the same time, there are cultural, behavioral aspects that we must squarely address. what are these cultural behavioral aspects that make for a successful science and its deployment. To give an example, when you say Atmanirbharta stands on three cultural pillars, which is, I would say, Atma Vishwas, self-confidence. So it's not like we lack IQ and training. It's just that, culturally we have not told people that you are as good as this great university XYZ. Why are you always looking up somewhere? Don't be a follower,
So
be a
Atma
leader.
Swabhiman also.
I will come to that. And indeed, that is the next Atma Samman, I call it. So Atma Samman is, Atma Samman then means that I respect myself above everybody else. What it basically means is, if I don't have Atma Samman, I can't give it to others. It's like money, I don't have it, I can't give it. So Atma Samman is what brings self-confidence, and Atma Chintan. So Atma Chintan, not same as Chinta, which is negative, but a positive, rational thinking. Honestly saying, look, who we are, where are we, where you want to be, and how you're going to get there. And then stick to that thing brutally. I mean, it's not about the self-interest. So oftentimes I see that people have done very good scientific analysis, but they are not able to translate that into action because, self-interest comes into play. I'll give you an example. So we say we should develop scientific temper. This is so important, scientific temper, evidence-based decision making. But what happens to me when I go to this committee, to select somebody, and my nephew walks in, I lose all my, what you call scientific temper. Okay, so scientific temper is not only about analysis, but carrying out that analysis, which needs to be done. And so, as a nation, if we had that character, I have no doubt that nobody can stop us with that youth, energy, and all that stuff which is going for us.
We also understand there is ANRF,
Yes.
so which is really going to support us in a big way,
Yeah.
Anusandhan National Research Foundation.
Correct.
Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there are two major things which have happened recently about funding for research. One of them, as you pointed out, Anusandhan National Research Foundation. So it brings in much more budget with it to support research, but at the same time also to support research which has relevance. And at the same time, it also reaches out to, let's say, state universities and other places which have not been so well funded. So by having more resources, it's certainly possible to involve more stakeholders of science and to empower them, and this is what ANRF is doing. At the same time, there is also an R&D and innovation fund which is driven by industry-led R&D. Now, historically, most of the R&D which is supported by the government were led by academia, which means professors, right? Which is very good. Okay, so professors and the students, PhD students, everybody, they do research, they write papers, they remain at the cutting edge. At the cutting edge, knowledge has to be generated. But don't forget that knowledge has to be consumed also. So that is where the innovation ecosystem like industry comes in. So when we say, look, that this fund is going to be led by industry-defined problem, it brings in the immediacy, it brings in the relevance and direction, and of course they can have academia as partner, but the problems would be defined by them, and this is a very substantial fund and funding. So this is worth about 20,000 crores per year for next 5 years. So I have no doubt that these two things together, ANRF, together working with this industrial R&D fund, would be actually transformative in the way we do science and technology. Not just the way we do science and technology, but how we use it. And so I'm very positive about these developments, that this would bring about the required cultural transformation as well, that would allow our science and technology to grow. The third aspect, which is very important, is policy. So we said, look, funding, we talked about cultural aspects, behavioral aspects, and the third aspect, which is equally important, are the policies. If you run a right kind of policies, no matter how much science you have, it's not going to work for your society. I'll give you a very simple example that anybody can understand without knowing science. There was a policy for 100 years from the time of British that nobody can do surveying and mapping in the country without very tedious approvals. Okay, and so that policy was a total nonsense because it was made with security concerns of 100 years ago. Now, when I was in Department of Science and Technology, we changed that policy. There was a big push from Honorable Prime Minister himself and PMO. I said, this is very counter, economy. So now what is the policy? And I'll tell you what the impact of that policy is. And I'll tell you how without policy, science cannot work. So for doing surveying and mapping, what you need is drone, you need a LiDAR, you need digital mapping and all that. All of that capability India has. Only thing that was preventing us from doing it is that there was no right policy. Policy did not allow us to do it. So now the policy was that no Indian entity, public or private, requires any tedious approval for doing surveying and mapping at any scale unless that area is protected by a competent authority. So for example, if it's a defense land or something like that, okay, leave it out. But for all developmental efforts, we need a policy which deregulates and liberalizes the sector of surveying and mapping. And you know what the impact of that is? Some people think it's thousands of crores, something is tens of thousands of crores, something is lakh crores, actually it's tens of lakhs of crores. There's one sentence policy. Well, you may have heard of this scheme called Swamitwa. So Swamitwa, which is launched by Honorable Prime Minister, basically one of the major problems in India is that people, the rural population, does not have ownership paper for their land. And there are these blood feuds going on for generations. There are 50% court cases being run because of these problems. Now the entire country is being digitally mapped thanks to this policy, digitally mapped at very good accuracy, 5 centimeters or so, digitally, which means, and the ownership certificates under this Swamitwa scheme are being given to the rightful owners. Okay, so it addresses the grassroots corruption and the lack of ease of doing business and so on. At the same time, all the non-performing assets which are in the form of land, they come out in economy, they become part of economy. Once you have ownership papers, you can go to bank, you can take loan against that land as a collateral. And so what it means is just like all the gold which is locked up in lockers doing nothing, the same way all our land was actually locked up and not doing anything for economy.
Sir, we were discussing and you were actually talking about how so much work is being done as far as emerging technology is concerned, the critical technologies are concerned. And that's something that our country is really now taking a lot of strides on. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so there are all kinds of technology. Let me put it this way. Entire future of humanity on planet Earth for all foreseeable time is intimately tied to what you may call AI universe. Now this AI universe is not just one thing, it's everything, and it's going to impact every aspect of your life from smallest to largest. So now you are looking at Industry 4.0. Now Industry 4.0 is the convergence of digital and cyber on one hand and physical on the other. So communication, computing, decision making through machine learning, and autonomous actions through robotics by actuators and so on. Convergence of all of this is what creates what we call Industry 4.0. Now going beyond that, this is on the horizon, next 20 years, the biological is going to be absorbed into it. What it means is cyber, physical and biological makes one triangle. And so what it means is that cyber, physical, a lot of it is going to be in my body, and a lot of my body, brain, is going to be in this. And so this is going to be so transformative, even bigger than the first industrial revolution. And unless you are totally prepared for it, that one would lose one's freedom yet again. So this is a very deep subject. So we don't have time actually to do the analysis of what the future looks like. But the whole point is that yes, we have to be totally prepared for it now. And so there are several missions. Now very new AI mission by MIT is looking at is broad basing all the tools of artificial intelligence universe of that, diffusing it everywhere in industry, in academia and so on. 5 years ago, Department of Science and Technology launched the mission I talked about, cyber physical systems, which has created the foundation based on which that we would build on the future. So these are critical technologies, absolutely. Even whether it's defense, whether it is, no matter what you talk about, even the systems of governance, everything is going to be fundamentally impacted by these technologies. Another one in the horizon is quantum technologies, a slew of technologies which are related to quantum communication, quantum computing. So if quantum computing becomes successful in a sense of mass scale, like we have personal computers today, you see your entire concept of security would undergo very tectonic shifts. I mean, everything like whether it's the security of your bank account, security of communication, what have you, all of that becomes totally redundant. Like today's technologies for safeguarding your privacy, your life, they become totally redundant, which means that countermeasures would have to be taken. So that is why emerging critical technologies and their mastery in time is so important. Time is an important factor. It is no longer possible to say, look, I will catch up after 20 years, I will import things. That's not going to work because these technologies are exponential.
And talking about technology, sir, one thing, and then we are going to also conclude, is that talking about the whole push towards innovation, the whole startup ecosystem also, which has now taken a boom in our country. Right. So tell us more about that as well and how.
So let me just very quickly tell you that back in 2015, there were less than 100 registered startups in the country. And this was the time when Honorable Prime Minister also launched the Startup India movement. Then things have really taken off. Today there are over 1.5 lakh registered startups, whole lot of them related to technology and so on. So this is growing what we call exponentially indeed. And the reasons for it, A, is because of change in the culture that our young graduates, etc., they are looking at this as an option, not just finding a job. They are looking at this in a very serious way. They have the hunger, they have the risk-taking capability that comes from change in culture. The second aspect is the right kind of policies that government has launched since then, and the opportunities and funds which are available, both private sector funds, investment in startups, as well as the government launched schemes. For example, Atal Innovation Mission of Niti Aayog, for example, Nidhi of Department of Science and Technology, and similarly in other ministries like MIT for digital technologies and so on. So there's never been a better time to be part of your startup ecosystem, and this is happening. My own prediction is in the next 10 years that we should be close to 1 million or 10 lakh startups going one order of magnitude higher than where we are now, and also deep tech startups. So when we are talking about all these solutions, you see the established companies are usually slow in uptake of new technology, in developing new technology, but startups are nimble, they are fast, and they have the right kind of people working for them, so that if you are looking for a solution, they can develop it much faster. And some of those solutions are passed on to established big companies. Some of them are scaled up by manufacturing themselves, and some of them generate IP, intellectual property, which then helps build businesses. So I am very upbeat on the scene for startups. Startups and also unicorns, for example, that we are number 3 in the world in terms of number of unicorns, which are companies which are valued at $1 billion. And also we are number 3 in the world in terms of number of startups.
I think that's a tremendous news. I think we are so happy and delighted about it. But talking about our traditional knowledge also and the scientific temperament that our country always had, how are we really taking it as far as taking also major steps towards this fourth economy that we are now?
Right. So you see, when you say traditional, okay, sometimes a different connotation context. What I would like to say is not simply traditional. It is actually time tested. What it means is, see, the modern science is only 1 century old, more or less, or industrial practices that we have are about a century and a half old. But you see, look at, for example, medical practices. They have been around for thousands of years. It's not like, oh, okay. So it's not like that they lack empirical evidence. That they have been good. So now what we are saying is, look, then we should build on this foundation. We should build on this foundation using modern tools of science. And in fact, there are programs like that. For example, Ayush supports a lot of this stuff. We say, look, that we have these time-tested things, and can we build further upon it in light of, let's say, modern tools of analysis, right? And so I think if we do that, this would be very, very beneficial. And don't forget, let me just kind of concluding say, when we say traditional knowledge, you see why so many people are unhappy today? Okay, if technology was the only solution to happiness, then we must have solved it, because all these so-called developed economies and countries, there should be nobody unhappy there. So therefore, please understand that there are two aspects of being human. One is the external world, the other is the internal world. And so when we say the traditional wisdom, whole lot of it actually deals with the internal world. And we must not discard that. Because after all, what is the goal of technology? Goal of technology is to create people who are happy, to create a happy, fulfilled society. And this is very well known, and not only by traditional practice. Let's say you do psychology 101. You know that there are certain needs in life, like roti, kapda, makan. They can be satisfied with technology and science. But there are other needs of mind, for example, fulfillment, happiness, and so on, is called Maslow's hierarchical needs, pyramid of hierarchical needs. Those are called growth needs, not deficiency needs. They cannot be satisfied by technology alone. So it's so important that we not only produce technology, we produce technology for happy people, to make them happy. And so this is
science is doing that. It's creating peace, it's creating harmony, and it's creating, areas of satisfaction, one would say. Because we're talking about science reaching to all.
Reaching to all. I am saying that this would take care of our physiological problems. But to say that it would take care of, for example, overarching problems like very huge unnecessary consumption leading to climate change. There is no technological fix for it. But traditional wisdom will actually tell you how to be a responsible consumer, for example. So one needs technology, and one needs a shift inside us, and this is where traditional wisdom is so important. Never equate happiness with consumption. Now this is something that industrial society has forgotten. And who is going to tell you about that? Nobody is going to tell you about that, because not the people who produce consumer goods. They are not going to tell you that. They are going to tell you, look, if you are feeling unhappy, buy another car.
So, sir, talking to you, especially that you have explained so much about what INSA is also doing, we are here as a country where science is really coming of age. I mean, we are really taking great strides as far as innovation is concerned. You've talked about research, you've talked about fellowships, you've talked about how everyone can collectively come together to build a beautiful society and a nation, of course, which we are really proud of.
We need to build, every society which succeeds needs to build a character. It needs to build an identification, not just with oneself, but with something larger. So having this kind of larger purpose in life and working together is so important. And you know that from COVID-19 time. So when COVID-19, the virus hit us, there was nothing in this country to deal with the virus. Not the protective suit, not N95 masks, no diagnostics, no ventilators, and no vaccine. All of that, it could have happened 10 years ago. It's not the science that prevented it. Okay, that science was always there, is there now to solve our problems. So what is it that prevented it? What prevented people not having a shared goal, not having a shared, clear, present objective, and working together for it. So sometimes you call it triple helix. You say, look, industry, academia, and government working together, like three strands to solve the problem. So now, you see, if we be a little bit less selfish, and then say, hey, what is in it for me only? Me is only a construct. It's not just my body, but my society is also me. So
you're talking about the philosophy
There
of
is
science.
no philosophy. Please understand, I'm not talking philosophy. I'm talking practical things. So unless you had this practical thing, you would not succeed. No matter how much of science and technology you had, because science and technology only in
And,
two hands.
globally also, we are really taking strides
You see,
now.
why certain societies, let's say Japan, Israel, why they are so successful? It's not because we lack equally good scientists and IQ and training. It's not because of that. It's because of their character. Okay, what they identify with their society, and they say, look, no matter what adversity we have, we are going to overcome it together.
I think what you've said is very, very crucial. We are talking
Yes.
about the collective strength
Yes.
that a nation, a society should have.
Absolutely.
And you've, sir, at length, you've talked about the scientific progress that the country is making, and also the whole diverse area of new technology coming in. You've talked about startups, how we are becoming Atmanirbhar. We have the Swadeshi landscape to really build ourselves on. Thank you so much for talking to us about all these things. But I think talking to you is never ending, because there's so much to learn from you, sir, and the insights
I
that we're
learned a
gaining
lot
from.
myself, and thank you so much for having me here and talk some science and some philosophy and something in between. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for talking
Enjoyed
to
it.
us. And that was Professor Sharma talking to us about gamut of issues as far as science and technology in our country is concerned, and also how it is making strides globally as well now. Thank you so much for watching this special interview. Do tell us how we can do much more, but do keep watching us as well. Namaskar once again.